PR Connections Radio presents.
Hello, this is Jesse Oakley III, and welcome to the Sunday Morning Chat Series with Jesse Oakley III. The purpose of the Sunday Morning Chat Series is I interview a plethora of positive people that are making big differences in their communities, whether they're speakers, authors, entertainers, educators. You will hear from them first right here on the Sunday Morning Chat Series with Jesse Oakley III. And today, we have ourselves a wonderful episode that is waiting for you. And education seems to be a very important topic. Without education, you will not have many trades that are out there, whether it be engineer, police officer, teacher, or any other type of education that's there. But we're going to delve into something called online education. And we have an online educator here, none other than my special guest for today, Mr. Greg Mauro. Greg, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well, Jesse. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, and it's good to have you here on the Sunday Morning Chat Series. Are you ready to go?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, and without further delay, let's chat.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you're in the online education. You're an online educator. Could you tell the people out there what an online educator does?
An online educator is an umbrella term that really encompasses anyone who works with students that are involved in online learning. They could be involved with students, meeting with them one-on-one for tutoring. It could be small group learning remediation. It could be a classroom size group of students that they attend supplemental classes from their own home. It could be people piped into an actual brick and mortar room and teach a particular subject, or it can be online teachers that work full time for a company such as California Connections Academy, and they meet with a certain schedule of students every week. So it's really a giant umbrella term for any type of learning where either the teacher and or the students are online.
All right. Now, could you tell me how you got started being an online educator? Take us to that journey.
That's a very interesting story, Jesse. Back in 2019, my wife was getting her teaching credential. And while she was getting her teaching credential through the residency program in Fresno Unified, that was her job. And they gave her a stipend. But of course, as with stipends, when you are doing internships and residencies, they're never really the same amount as a full-time job that you do 9 to 5. So I needed to do some extra stuff on the side to try to make up that difference. That was just real life. And I started working for a company in 2019 called VIP Kid, which is a Chinese-based company that works with students online teaching English language learners. So basically teaching students how to read, write, and speak in English.
All right. Now, when it comes to this career of online education and you being an online educator, what were some of the challenging moments that you faced in your career?
Well, I didn't begin my full-time transition in online education until this past spring. I think you know, and I've talked to you about this and other Toastmasters, I suffered a back injury in February where I had a sequestered disc. That sequestered disc had me on disability, and it eventually ended me on disability all the way from the end of February till the end of the school year in June. Long story short, I was sitting at home not getting my full salary because in California, one of the dirty little secrets about education is that teachers don't get automatic disability insurance like most people do in their job. You have to pay for it separately from a life insurance policy company like Prudential, for example. And if you don't have that, What happens is they take away your substitute's pay, and then say, now you get the rest. Well, that substitute pay is $200 a day. You calculate that 200 times 5 days a week. That's $1,000 a month that just got. Well, I went, okay, what am I going to do? I have a back injury. I can't do a job that requires me on my feet. Well, I taught online for VIP Kid back from 2019 to 2021. Let me just start applying for places. And fast forward to now, I currently work for 3 separate companies. The first company is a company called Ivy Global, which I highly recommend to anybody out there who is wanting to delve into online education. I teach students that are based in Vietnam. So you can imagine the time difference. The students attend our classes as a supplemental program. And I'm teaching during standard time, 4 to 6 a.m., 5 days a week. And I have 4 different classes that I meet with. One of them 2 days a week. The other 3 are 1 day a week each. And it's a variety of subjects. I have 3 classes of ELA and 1 class of science and math. And I work with 3rd, 4th, and 6th graders in that position. And I started working for them back in March, and I was hired for 2 positions, 2 classes, a 3rd grade class and a 3rd grade second language class. It was basically called a general English class, and then a regular 2nd grade class. And I loved it, and it was such a great fit that they offered me a position for 10 hours a week. Well, that's good, but it's not full time. 10 hours a week doesn't pay the bills. So I started looking for other opportunities to do online learning. And I work for a company now called Talent Nook, which is based out of Dublin, California, which if you're familiar with that, that is in the East Bay near Livermore, Pleasanton area. And they do an after-school program called Elements of Reading, where a teacher like myself is piped in via Google Meets to a classroom, small group of students that are at a similar reading level. There is an actual live teaching assistant in the room with the students at all times, as well as an after-school program staff person because of regulations. Suffice to say, what I do there is work with students that are below grade level, anywhere from 1 to 3 years below grade level, and helping them to refine their reading skills. I work for a 3rd company, mostly during evenings and weekends, and that company is called Soar Kids, based out of my hometown of San Jose, California. And I started there in May teaching ELD classes in a pilot program. Well, the pilot program ended, but they kept me on to teach reading groups. And in that company, I teach small groups of students who basically, it's kind of like the kid version of a book club. In fact, that's what it's called. The students read a book, and usually it's for the older kids. I work with mostly 5th and 6th graders. They read 1 book every 2 weeks. We discuss half of it each session. We talk about like what are the main facts, details, as well as the issues, and we really get to discuss some really deep issues. In fact, my wife has been in the background going, gosh, these kids are discussing some real heavy issues. And so I have a variety of roles right now. That's not my ultimate goal. I mean, I would love to be able to eventually get to a full-time position with a company. The problem is that there's not a lot of full-time online teaching positions. So what ends up happening, in fact, when I worked for VIP Kid, most of the people who worked full-time online worked for 2 or more companies. And they would piecemeal together a schedule by working for that. And that's how I do. I work about approximately 33 to 35 hours a week now. It's going to increase to 37 in January.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and I won't go into all the specific details, but I've been an educator for over 25 years. Since 1998, I've been credentialed.
Wow.
And the game has changed since 1998.
And the only thing that is truly constant is change.
That's what I told my aide at my reading program, because she's 23. She doesn't have a lot of experience, and she's frustrated at some of the changes, like cancellations. Some of the times the classes get canceled because there's not enough staff. They pull our staff person from the after school program to help out. I'm like, the only constant is change. I said, this is education. However, what I will say, unfortunately, the state of California is really heavily invested in something called restorative practices.
Okay.
I don't know if for the audience, I'll explain what that is. Back in the old days, old school, when you and I, Jesse, were in school, they had detention, lots of suspensions, and it was strict. Sometimes old school, there would even be spanking. I got spanked in 1978 by my kindergarten teacher with a yardstick because I touched a record player without permission. Right. Well, obviously, we don't do that. But what's happening is that some schools, too many in my opinion, what they're doing is they're taking this restorative practices, which is really good in principle. Because in principle, what it says is when a child misbehaves, it is a function of a need that is not met, which is true. Usually it's because they want attention, or it's out of frustration, or it's hunger. And our job as educators is to find that. And that's great. But what happens is you try these things with students. And what really kind of pushed me to online learning was I had a particular student last year at the school I was at, which will remain nameless for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And when this student was violent, a fourth grader, multiple times, the kid was boomeranged back. Boomeranged back to me and was never suspended. There was no detention at the school. And I asked administration, can you help me with this? And I was told by the school counselor, well, the old 5 affirmations for every 1 corrective statement is now outdated. You now have to give 9 positive verbal affirmations for every 1 corrective, which is hard. And it's difficult. And I'm not saying restorative practices are bad, but there are states like Arizona. I have a good friend of mine who moved to Arizona several years ago, and they've banned restorative practices. They don't allow it in the state of Arizona because restorative practices, if they're not implemented properly, where there's a common knowledge, a common base, and a common language, because it has its own language, where you're talking to students and you're asking them for a restorative conversation and you're trying to restore that relationship with them, and for students to restore that relationship with each other, because you don't want to just give a kid a detention if they said something by accident that was mean if they normally don't. And for 80% of the kids it works. But the combination of the back injury combined with the lack of support that I received from where I was drove me to work online learning because it's a much lower stress environment.
Right. And I tell you, that's quite the fascinating perspective that you shared with us here in the chat series. Next question I have for you, pardon me, what were some of the best moments you experienced throughout this career?
I have had some really wonderful moments in my teaching career. I worked for a school district in Farmersville, California, which is a little town just to the east of Visalia. Okay. Population 10,000. I worked for them for 4 years, and I would have kept working for them if I had not moved to Clovis, which is about 60 miles from Farmersville, made it difficult to do the commute still.
Right.
But in any case, one of my best moments, and I had several from them, but one of my best moments was being able to play Cat in the Hat every year for Read Across America for Dr. Seuss's birthday. And thousands of schools across America do some sort of celebration. Well, the school that I was at, the principal at the time was a former journalist and was a drama person in high school and college. And we would act out skits for our readathons in the fall. And when we did our Read Across America assembly, yours truly was asked to be the Cat in the Hat.
Ooh.
For 3 years in a row, I would come up with a rap that was a play on a contemporary rap song, but would have educational words in it. For example, Bruno Mars's 24 Karat Magic turned into 24 Karat Readers.
Ah.
Yes, and Ice Ice Baby got turned into Read Baby.
Ooh.
And we would work out dance routines and the choreography, and we would have guest readers for that day. And it was such a wonderful environment. It was a second and third grade school. All the kids in the district in second and third grade went to that school. And I loved it for the most part. No place is perfect, but when I look back in my career, that is what really got me interested in like that second, third grade strand, was working there for 4 years as a third grade teacher. Another positive memory that I've had more recently was Ivy Global every year has an end of the year celebration, and they make it big. It's like this talent show, and they have the administrators talking about the kids. It's almost like a school version of like the Oscars. It's really cool, and they have 2 different locations in Vietnam that they're holding this from, and we're on Zoom. Well, I had to leave that ceremony a little bit early just because I had to run an errand, my daughter to train. I get an email the next morning saying, you won one of our teacher awards. And it gave me a small monetary bonus. Now, in schools, they don't give you monetary bonuses usually. You work on a pay scale based on years of experience and number of credits beyond your bachelor's.
Right.
That's how it works. But I had not in my career up until that point received any award for my teaching. And I don't do what I do primarily for the recognition. Don't get me wrong. I do what I do for the kids.
Right.
I will say, after what I endured with the back injury, with the transition of jobs, to find out that I felt valued when, they saw me for what I brought to the table.
Okay.
And so that was also another really powerful moment for me. I would have to say probably a third very powerful moment in education recently was having, I took over, when I started with Ivy Global, I took over a class that had lost their teacher earlier in the year. Their teacher left, and they had a succession of subs.
Right.
The second grade class, I come in March, late March, and there are just times when you work with a group of people that it just clicks, no matter what you do, whatever work environment. And I had about 18, 19 second graders of Vietnam, and they were the absolutely most adorable, kind-hearted, open group of students that I have had a pleasure of working with. They really, and I find, unfortunately, and I don't want to throw shade on our own country, but just kind of what it is. A lot of people in America, they think of educators as nothing more than a glorified babysitter.
Oh yeah.
But if you have ever interacted with people from Asian countries, they don't see teachers that way. Teachers are highly respected for what we bring to the table. And children, I'm not saying there aren't any badly behaved children. I especially with VIP kid, I had a kid tell me to shut up. And I've had kids that have misbehaved. I had a kid earlier this year that tried to use AI. And he thought that he can get away with using the AI, a sixth grader. And he also spoke out loud about why was somebody else's mom in the room, and why is she there, and she doesn't need to be there. So yeah, I've occasionally have had kids that I've had to say, hey, whoa, just like any classroom in the United States. However, by and large, there's a general difference, an increase in respect that is given to educators. And it just makes it more fulfilling, even though the pay is not as much. And even though I have to, at this point, do a patchwork of full-time jobs. That's not where I want to be, but it's part of the journey.
Exactly. Now, if you were to meet someone that is inspired by what you're doing as an online educator and online learning, and they want to do what you're doing, they want to be in your shoes, what advice would you give that person?
Well, first of all, you have to know what you're in for. It's different than teaching in a brick and mortar where you're teaching 8 to 2:30 or 8 to 3. Depending on who you work for, you could be working early mornings, like 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning. You could be working afternoons. You could be working during the day. You could be working evenings and weekends. And I would encourage them and say, if you really want to explore this and you're willing to work non-traditional hours, willing to work multiple jobs, the stress level I have experienced this year has been so much less than in the past many years for me. Because for me, I love using educational technology. I love interacting with people of different backgrounds. It is incredibly fascinating to learn about different cultures and traditions. I teach kids from Korea. I teach kids from Vietnam. I work with kids in Gilroy that are mostly of a Latino background. So in a given week, I work with people from 3 countries. And not only, the Korean students I work with, some of them live in Canada, some live in Australia. They don't all live in America. And a good number of them live in South Korea. And it's real interesting to get to know that. But if you're the kind of person that wants to make a difference internationally, and you're the kind of person that loves technology and loves to use different types of technology, and I have to say this, thank you, Toastmasters, because over the past 5 years in Toastmasters, I have been online and have done been Zoom Master, and I'm currently the D33 logistics manager. Those experiences have really helped shape me into being an online teacher. So I say to somebody, if you're willing to deal with those differences, go for it. There's a need for it. There is a real need for qualified, motivated people to work for these companies. There's ads all the time. I got contacted by Ivy Global a month ago saying, can you please help us get some of your friends, teacher friends? We have openings, please. There are companies that are dying to get qualified English-speaking teachers. Now, you're not going to get paid $90,000 or $80,000 or even $70,000. The standard rate of pay is about anywhere from $25 to $35 an hour, which, while it's not minimum wage, it's low. So you have to be in a situation where if you're married, which I am, my wife is fully supportive of what I do, and we financially make it. So I'm not going to say it's for everybody, right? Because it's not. I know teachers that wouldn't even do parent-teacher conferences on Zoom with parents who couldn't make it. It was either in person or nada, or a phone call. And I was like, hey, if a parent can't make it because they have to go to work, that's real. I'll meet with them online. So I love what I do, and I'm hoping it goes into more, and I'm looking for more. But there's companies that are just clamoring for people to do this. And I encourage people, if you're a classroom teacher and you just want to try it on the side, try it on the side. There are companies that will hire you for as little as 2 hours a week. You try it, you like it, you can ask for more hours, maybe you transition to online teaching, or maybe you keep it as a side gig. There's a lot of teachers who do side gigs, and I've done Shipped as a side gig as well. Shipped is that people that, with the green shirts, and they deliver things from Target and other stores. I did that too. And I'd rather be teaching online as a side gig than doing Shipped. So I would encourage people to just be open to it, and more students are involved. I would encourage parents, if your child is not doing well in the school environment, there are schools that are absolutely phenomenal and wonderful, and they're perfect matches for the kids. But if in your child's particular situation, you're finding that, hey, it's not working out, I would encourage you to look at online schools, look at charter schools, look at the different educational options that are there in our country, because we have schools that people can join for free that provide the students with a computer and online curriculum, so that the parent doesn't have to be like the stereotypical homeschooler of coming up with the curriculum and grading it.
And what would be some of these websites they could go to? Where could they actually go?
Okay. Now I don't know about about all the states, but in California Connections Academy is a leading online school. One of my sister-in-laws has worked for California Connections Academy for almost 10 years. In fact, her 3 kids are in it. 10th grader, 5th grader, 2nd grader, and they all love it. In fact, the oldest one, who's in 10th grade, was taking, I do believe, Algebra 1 in 7th grade.
Oh.
And that's the advantage of online learning, is that if you have a kid that is super bright and just gets bored by the classroom, because a lot of times teachers are trying to teach to kids that don't have it yet, that need the remediation. It's hard when you have 30, 36 kids to meet everybody's needs. But if you have a kid that's super, super bright and motivated, online school is great, because you have kids that can graduate from high school with college credits, even up to and including an associate's degree, because they're so motivated and they're given those opportunities to learn more than they ever would at their neighborhood high school. Of course, again, it depends on the local district you're in and what other charter schools and private schools are available, because they vary greatly. But yeah, I would encourage parents out there, don't settle for the public school system if it's not meeting your kids' needs, because maybe that will be a wake-up call to our public school system that there needs to be more done, because a lot more needs to be done. And we could do a whole other episode just on that alone, or multiple ones. But I would encourage parents, look at your local online schools. There are online programs such as SOAR Kids that I work for out of San Jose that do online reading groups. And they're mostly kids that are Asian, but not all. And you don't have to be Asian, obviously, to attend it. But if you want your kids to gain that extra practice and challenge, do that. There are online schools that do supplemental science, supplemental history, supplemental math. You can get tutors. There's a big company called tutor.com.
Right.
where people are hired to tutor people. In fact, Class Dojo, which is a website where you can track kids' behavior and give them rewards, like virtually, for things they do well. They also just added this year online tutoring. So there's lots of opportunities for people to be involved in online teaching if they want to dip their toe in and just kind of see if they like it, as well as for their children. People should never settle for that. Of my 3 children, 2 of them were homeschooled for a time.
Right.
Don't settle for what your local school district gives you. If they're not willing to work with you, if they can't produce the environment that is safe for your children, then find the alternatives, because they're out there. People just need to look at them, explore them more, and utilize what's around us.
All right. And the next question I have for you is a shout out time. This is a good idea to actually give a shout out for people that made your journey possible. If you can give a shout out to anybody, who would you like to give a shout out to?
My wife, Sherry, and I'll tell you why. When I had my back injury, was extremely supportive of my healing process and rehabilitation process. When I brought up to her that I wanted to do this full time and I didn't want to go back to the classroom, she fully supported me, even though she knew it meant taking a hit in our income. Without her support, I wouldn't be so confident in what I'm doing. And when things are hard and I'm like, I'm not getting the hours this week, because it's not as consistent. One of the differences too is if a class is canceled or you're on vacation, you don't get paid. Mm-hmm. It's not like in teaching where you get your pay spread out over 11 or 12 months.
Right.
But Sherry has been so supportive with me on that. I would have to give a shout out to her. And then as far as an educator, I worked with a teacher in Farmersville, and her name is Cindy Lee. Mm. And Cindy was my instructional coach for 3 years. And the first year I was there, she was a second grade teacher. She was there in my journey, helping me to become a better teacher. And I never had an instructional coach help me in my career until she did. I improved in the 3 years she was my instructional coach more than I had improved in my prior 15 years in teaching, by helping me with the skills to become a much more well-rounded teacher. And, I don't see her very much anymore just because of distance of life. She's in Visalia, I'm here. But I will tell you that the lessons she taught me about how to teach children, about how to interact with people, about how to hold yourself, about how to plan, were all awesome things. Things that, I wish every student, every teacher could get. And, because as an educator, we're not alone. And a lot of times there's horror stories of teachers that are being treated as like they have to be lone rangers. And she motivated me to want to do more and to possibly go eventually into curriculum development, which I still want to do, and planted the seeds along with Toastmasters to get my master's. A year ago, I received my master's in organizational leadership. So I'm hoping to parlay that into something more with one of the online companies I'm working for. But I know it's a process.
It is a process. It is a process. Now, the last question I have for you is addressed to my fans, which are known as the happy people. And every episode, they definitely love something on a positive note from different people that I've had before. And if you had a chance to give wise words of wisdom to my crew, the happy people, what would it be?
When you're working with people, and I have found this to be true, and this was a hard lesson, most of the time, probably 98, 99% of the time, when someone is acting in a negative way around you or towards you, it has no reflection on you. It speaks about them. But when I began as an educator, it was hard because you can't be codependent if you want to be a total effective teacher. You have to try it as much as you can to check that codependency at the door and realize that if a kid says, I hate you, it doesn't really mean necessarily that they hate you. Mm-hmm. But it hurts sometimes. And that's real. But my words of wisdom would be to just keep doing what you know is the right thing to do, even when the haters, and there always will be haters because that's just life, are going to try to throw shade on you. And again, most of the time it speaks much more about them than it ever does about you. So I would say if you know what you're doing is the right course, don't let anybody stop you from that because they may not express that appreciation now. We are seed planters in education.
Right.
We plant the seed. We don't always see the results. But just to trust that what we do will make a difference, even if we're not affirmed at the time.
Perfect bookend to this wonderful interview. And on behalf of all the happy people that are watching this, I thank you, Greg, for taking the time out to be here on the Sunday Morning Chat Series with Jesse Oakley III.
Thank you, Jesse.
And this concludes this episode of the Sunday Morning Chat Series. For more, stick around every Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for the next Sunday Morning Chat Series with Jesse Oakley III. And if you want more of the past interviews, I now have a new YouTube channel called Sunday Morning Chat Series with Jesse Oakley III. You can just type it up and you'll see a plethora of people that I've interviewed for many years in the past. This concludes this episode of the Sunday Morning Chat Series with Jesse Oakley III. This is Jesse Oakley III signing off with a take care. And until next time, happy people. Bye.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.